Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Scale Your Real Estate Co-Living podcast. Man, I'm excited. This guy is just, the guest I have for you today is so cool because he's not a big social media influencer, but it doesn't have this crazy big following, but he's here just sharing real value from ground up construction of co-living in one of the most expensive markets in the United States, Los Angeles. And he's doing it in some really cool creative ways. And then he's stabilizing. He's got this vision for how he's stabilizing these properties in a really powerful way by renting out the entire co-living home. I mean, we're not talking a small co-living home. This guy's building a 32-bedroom duplex. Insane. And we talk about all the tips and tricks and how to do that. I really think that in the co-living space, ground-up construction is some of the best if co-living's a niche, ground-up construction of co-living is like the niche, but it's so cool. And I've been doing a couple of buildings of my own, and it's really cool to see how we can design them and make them perfect and make them just set for co-living off the bat. And then he also talks about his take on co-living and is this just a fad? Or is this something that's truly, truly here to stay? So don't take my word for it. Let's listen to Ross French as we bring him in. I like this guy so much. I said, hey, I got to bring you into my Financial Freedom University and my Co-Living Inner Circle to get you to coach on ground up construction. So hopefully we'll work something out with him on that. But check out this episode and enjoy. Well, Ross, I am so excited to have you on the episode, man. This is just, it's always awesome to have developers on here and people who are kind of like pushing the limits of what's possible with this co-living strategy. So I know in this episode, we're going to talk about ground up construction, how you're developing some $6 million duplexes in Los Angeles. We're going to talk about doing this like room rental strategy in crazy expensive markets like Los Angeles, which is the 9th most expensive market in the world I just looked up. And we're going to talk about just like raising capital and different ways that your brain thinks about partnerships and then creative ways to stabilize these properties. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but Ross, I want to say, first of all, thanks for being on the show. Welcome, buddy. Good to see you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. Appreciate it. It's definitely a pleasure. But just a little bit about me. You know, my background really is in construction management. I'm a degreed engineer with a bachelor's in construction management. So out of college, out of school, I really just moved over to the corporate side of things. Spent 20 years there. The first 15 working for a Fortune 500 company, and then another 5 working for a Fortune 1000 company. So the first 15 years really kind of figuring it out. More on the heavy civil, heavy infrastructure. And then the last 5, I was doing more vertical stuff. And actually when I left about a year ago, I was running a very large project for a very difficult client. The client was JPL NASA. So, I'm definitely, definitely got a good background, a decent, solid background in the construction space. And then, years ago, I got into real estate about 2009, 2010, just got into real estate, kind of the buy and hold, the stuff everybody tells you to do. That was attractive to me. But it was a few years later, about 2016, 2017, I was shopping. I was ready to buy another property. But I just couldn't get over the fact that stuff here in the backyard of Los Angeles is trading at $300 a square foot at that point in time, which in today's terms, that's a good price. But at that time, I was pretty convinced I could build for about $125 a square foot. And then, I found a property. I did the whole deal, went for it, and I was wrong. But I built it for about $151 a square foot and then sold it for close to the $300. It was $290 and change. Once I did that first deal, kind of just haven't looked back. Currently, just closed on 2 escrows this last month, which puts me right around a $32 million backlog of developments. So 25 of that 32 is really focused on the co-living kind of, co-living strategy. So, I'm super excited to obviously connect with you and just kind of go through everything.
Oh yeah, Ross, that's awesome, man. And it's crazy how like some of those early successes, it's like when you do something, you like have this idea, you go after it, you have an early success, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm all in. Like you just go for it, right? That's kind of what I feel like you did. But what I want the listeners to take away though, how did you go from like traditional buy and hold, some development to co-living? What was the moment where you started to realize like, ooh, like I don't need to, because I'm assuming that first one was like the one you just gave us the example of. That was a single family home.
It was a fourplex.
It was a fourplex. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of go from that to I need to do this room rental strategy? I need to go into that. Tell us about that transition and what were the ahas along the way to that journey?
Yeah. So as I was doing my fourplex, I was working full time, working 50, 60 hours a week. I would meet with the developer that was doing the deal. I would meet with him Saturday, pretty much at 7:00 or 8:00 in the morning. We'd walk my project. We'd kind of walk, put out little fires, call the subs, stuff like that. And then, it was only four units or four dwellings. So about 30, 35 minutes later, he'd be like, "Hey, Flacco, what are you doing? You want to go grab breakfast and walk more properties?" So I'd say, sure. So for the next 3 hours or 2 hours, 3 hours, we'd go eat, talk, and then we'd go drive some of the other stuff that he was developing. So I got in this routine of almost every weekend, early morning Saturday doing this in Los Angeles. And one day we went to a property that it wasn't his, but it was a colleague of his. And it was a 26 bedroom, 26 bathroom duplex. And I remember walking it. I was like, that's so stupid. Nobody's gonna buy that or whatever.
By the way, that's most people's reaction when they first hear co-living. They're like, that will never work, right? And people had that same reaction when Uber first came out, like strangers getting in the back of your car. When Airbnb first came out, same reaction. Oh, everyone's going to destroy your house. So I love that you just shared that. I just wanted to interject that, but please keep going.
Oh, you're good. So that's what I thought. I thought this is stupid. Nobody's going to want to be interested in this asset. And then, I was kind of tracking these things. And then when I looked back, I saw what that thing sold for. I think it sold for nearly $3 million or at $3 million. And that was pre-COVID. And so then I saw that and I'm like, oh, what did I miss? And then I kind of figured out a little bit of what I missed, not everything, but I figured out, some of the stuff I missed. And then I would kind of just set out to do my own from then. And these things take a long time when we're talking ground up development. You may have 6 months to a year just in permitting, stuff like that, finding the capital and all that stuff. But that was kind of the light bulb moment.
That's cool.
How I got into this.
Yeah, going from a fourplex to walking 26 beds and 26 baths. So what is that? 13 on each side? Because a duplex, right? So 13, 13 and a 13, 13?
Yeah.
Dang.
Yep.
And we're building right now a 6. We're building an 8-6 and an 8-6, but I couldn't imagine almost doubling that on either side. That's insanity. So this is cool, man. This is so cool because I have like so many questions around all of this. So tell us how you went from there. So you have this idea, you have this aha moment, and you're like, it's stupid. Then you realize like, wait a second, there's actually something to this. Where did you start your journey then with developing co-living? How has that started? Tell us a little bit about what you have in the works, what you're working on developing. I know I kicked this episode off by saying that you're developing a $6 million duplex. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that. Just give people some context for kind of what you're working on specifically on the ground up development co-living side of things.
Yeah, for sure. So the next step for me, as far as it goes, as it relates to co-living, the next step for me was really just, finding the capital and then really looking for similar, the zoning. I always focus on zoning. I always focus on basically knockdown houses here in Los Angeles because there's no more land, but you're looking for zoning that's very favorable and something that you can kind of max out. max out the height is really the key. But as soon as you find a piece of a lot, let's say, you're going to go do a building envelope study, and you're going to look at the length, you're going to look at the width, and then you're going to look at the height. By height, I mean typically 4 stories. I'm doing 5 stories. Well, 4 stories plus a rooftop deck in North Hollywood right now, but that's the limit on the co-living. Yeah, we are doing some 4 stories. But yeah, you max that out. You have your constructible square footage. So on the deal I'm currently doing, it's 11,760 constructible square foot with 4 stories. And we are able to achieve 32 bedrooms, 32 bathrooms on that property. It's very close to public transportation, some good main streets. It is in the South Central Los Angeles area. And, I've got a whole process from start to finish. I have spent so many years as a general contractor for big companies. I just apply what I've learned there on the residential side. So by no means am I coming in and I'm going to knock these out with my own crews. That's not the case. I'm just the guy that, I'm not the contractor. I'm not the GC. I'm just the guy, I would say, that knows how to bid these out and bid these out competitively. So on my, on the 32 bedroom that I just mentioned, what I do is I look at the city's data. I go into all their certificate of occupancies that are published. And then I filter through and I get rid of everything that doesn't apply. I get rid of all the swimming pools, all the CMU blocks, all the apartment complexes, because I'm not building apartments, but I will funnel all this data down, and pretty quickly I will be able to look by zip code. I will be able to look by number of stories. So if I'm building 4 stories, I will look for contractors and certificate of occupancies. Maybe they're 3 stories, 4 stories. But basically, I take all this data, all the certificate of occupancies that are out there in the city of LA. I funnel it and filter it down to basically a list of certificates that might end up being 400 to 500 properties. And then from there, I'm able to look at the general contractors that are in this space building these assets by zip code. And that's my call list. I just hit Google, build Zoom. I find I find all the contractors' phone numbers, look them up, start getting pricing out of 20 guys, make 20 phone calls, kind of chasing them around. But out of 20 contractors, 5 are going to be out of business. Another 5 are going to say, no, thanks, but no thanks. I'm too busy. And then you're left with 10. Everybody says, send you the plans. So I send them the plans. Out of those 10, I'd say half of them are going to kind of flake. But in my case, we did get about 4. We did get 4 bids back, and everything was under $200 a square foot. So
yeah, that's crazy. They say the biggest way to vet anybody, whether it's a new staff member or a contractor, anyone or any kind of operator, is by track record. And so what a better way to go look at their track record than see what they've actually gotten a certificate of occupancy on already. So I dig that, dude. That's a scrappy, really cool strategy, kind of a hack right there that you just shared with us. Thanks for that. I'm still, this is crazy to me, man. 32 bedrooms. So 32 bedrooms, which is 16 on each side. If it's a duplex, is insane. Does that in LA, do you have to build that in a certain type of a zoning, or can you just, are you building you mentioned zoning is something you look for, like what kind of zoning and what kind of codes? I'm assuming this falls under commercial codes for what you guys have to build. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'm building by right. So, the zoning, so let's step back. The zoning we're looking for is R2. On an R2 lot, you can go 3 stories. Now, if you find a lot that's a little more dense, it will end up being an RD2 or RD15 or an R3.
So R stands for residential. So this is residential zoning.
Yeah, residential zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything I'm focused on is residential zoning. And I guess the trick, if you want to call it that, I just maximize the building envelope. And then from maximizing that constructible square footage on the building envelope, I can quickly see, the rough square footage per bedroom it's going to take. And it's just simple math. From there, if you've done that simple math, you might end up with 30 bedrooms that it can shake out. I always like to maximize it because you can always remove bedrooms and put more common space in, or put a space in where people can work out, or a little gym, or a little study room, or sound studio or something. But yeah, working with investors, we always try to just max out that number, so we have kind of a baseline to move forward with. But yeah, we're building by right, so we're not tricking any building codes. By right basically means that the plan checker, we're staying within the limits of what the city has defined as a dwelling. So the plan checker really can't come back and say, "Hey, man, there's too many bedrooms here." He can't have an opinion. Now, if I have a structural calculation that was, off or not conservative enough, because we are in earthquake country here, he can definitely, comment on that. He can say, "Hey, this didn't calc out," or these fixtures, that's the wrong material. He can make comments like that, but he cannot weigh in on his opinion on the number of bedrooms, as long as
you're saying that because it's like, hey, by the way the codes are written, I know I can build a duplex here. That's by right. And so the codes don't allow that the city to have an opinion on what's inside the duplex necessarily. This is what I hear you saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they could say, no, you're trying to build a duplex on a single family lot, and like that's not allowed. But because you can build a duplex, they don't necessarily have the opinion on what's inside. It's kind of what I hear you saying. I know there's a simplistic way, but yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah, so we just stick within those limits, basically those four walls. Obviously, we're going to max out the number of stories, probably up to 4 stories. I wouldn't go much higher than that for this model, but yeah, we're sticking within the city limits. And actually, the ADUs here in California are kind of the hot topic, or the hot thing here in the last couple of years. So on the 2 that we just closed, we're definitely working with an architect that has a great understanding of how to push the city limits, because yeah, we've got some ADUs that are 9 bedroom and 9 bathroom ADUs. Traditionally, and I can't keep up with the ADU laws, so forgive me, but traditionally, when you read the ADU laws and stuff like that, they want a maximum of 1,200 square feet. But yeah, we're doing on that one, it's just shy of 3,000 square foot. ADU.
Wow.
That'll end up being 9 beds.
I think a lot of people, man, when they hear this many bedrooms in a home, it kind of trips them out a little bit. There's like, holy cow, like that must be the worst place to live ever. But I think, and I know we weren't necessarily planning on sharing any plans or pictures, but I've seen some of these buildings, and they're nice. Like I remember thinking, we're not. They're building them with also flow in mind. There's common spaces here. There's right. Like talk to us maybe a little bit about that. You mentioned a little workout gym or a sound studio. I mean, these and then a lot of private baths, which is in the co-living space, is something that's like super desired, super needed. And I think that's one of the biggest pluses for ground up construction versus converting a single family home to this model, is that you can just put all those bathrooms in from the front, and it kind of becomes like the room becomes the new apartment, right? Is that how you see it? Or how would you explain to listeners just maybe what would you say to someone who's like, that sounds like the worst place to live ever. You're just packing people in there. Like maybe give us a little sense for that. So we understand you're not building 6x6 rooms with a toilet in the corner.
Yeah, no, I know where you're coming from. I know the idea is definitely pushing the limit. But when you're driving a Target on Sunday with your wife or your spouse or girlfriend, and you see all kinds of housing problems, I mean, there's definitely a need. But kind of answer your question. So yeah, we work with an architect that's been doing this for, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 years. So like the 9-bedroom ADU that I mentioned, he'll forcefully put kind of the kitchen common space in the middle, and then it breaks it up. He'll put like four bedrooms, 4 bathrooms on one wing, and then he'll put the other 5 on the other wing. So he'll kind of make it kind of equalize that where he can, and then make the common space. He always tries to nail that down so it's in the middle of the building. And yeah, everybody does have their own bathroom, so you get a little more privacy there. That's what everybody wants. The bedrooms, the bedrooms end up being kind of a standard size bedroom. We have talked about doing kind of just all masters, but nothing I'm doing right now. That's just been talk, I guess, at this point, but nothing I'm doing right now is shaking out to that. Actually,
how big is like a standard size bedroom? Was that like a 10 by 10 or?
They usually, yeah, kind of, well, no, I'd say a little bit more, usually like 11 by 12. But yeah, they usually shake out to 130, 140 square feet, something like that. But then you add on top of that, you'll have like a closet. I don't know how big closets are, maybe not too big, maybe 10 or 15 square feet. And then you'll add on the bathroom, which ends up being probably another 40 to 50 square feet. So yeah.
Anything else you guys do? And by the way, I made a note. I don't know if your architect would be up for an interview or chatting, but that'd be super cool if his brain's been thinking about that. But, and how these things are designed. But like anything else you guys do that's kind of unique as far as the build of them or the design of them? Common space, centrally located, that makes sense. You get the rooms, you get the private baths, that's a huge plus. Everybody's got their own closet, which I didn't even mention that. That's a really cool plus. But anything else there that's relevant?
Not yet. I'm working with 2 newer investors right now, but we have had the conversations where we basically, I guess I kind of hinted at it, but yeah, we basically would eliminate some bedrooms so that we can accommodate better, just better amenities for the people there. But the idea is floating around. Again, I can kind of repeat them, but yeah, just a place for people to work out, get their exercise in daily. One would be like a sound studio where people can go in and, do podcasts like this. They can reserve it. It's a quiet spot. And then the other place would just be like a study, a library type setup for people just to get in there. They've got a quiet space, knock out their studying and stuff like that. But we've not implemented those yet, but those are definitely items that are, they very reasonably priced, but it's all about the people that are living there. Cause there's a lot of bedrooms. So you want to make sure that everybody's got a place to go, get away from, just kind of get away and do their own thing.
Yeah, there's a really cool concept, I think, that I've started to see more in co-living. It's something I've always had a vision for, of like, if you can combine co-living with co-working in some cool capacity, then like you eliminate, for at least a young professional, for the right demographic, someone that's a working young professional, you're going to eliminate a bill that they would probably pay, right? Which is they're going to co-work too. They're going to have a little office or a studio or something like that. So I think that's a really, really cool idea. Real quick question. Do you insulate it all between these walls? Or double sheetrock or anything like that? Tell me about that.
We're not doing the double sheetrock, sorry, but we will spend money on 7/8 instead of 5/8. Just a little more durable, gives it a little bit more longevity. We'll do ceramic floor on the first level because it's usually a high foot traffic area, and then we kind of go back to the long, resilient vinyl stuff on levels 2 and above. 4-foot hallways, so we're not sticking with the standard hallway size, but we do want to kind of up the hallway size and the stairs and stuff like that. We go with cast iron piping instead of the ABS cheap stuff because it's sound resistant. There's a lot less sound as you're, flushing toilets, people taking showers. No PEX piping. Typically it's copper PVC, but yeah, PVC again for longevity. We do the insulation. Actually, we'll stagger studs, and then we'll wrap the insulation around the staggered studs to kind of dampen the sound. There's probably another, I don't know, 10 or 20 things I'm forgetting about. I've got a little hit list, but those are the things that pop into mind.
That's great. No, I'm glad you shared that. I think that's some really cool things that people ask a lot about when you're talking about building these from the ground up. So I love that. Well, man, I want to transition a little bit into how do you think about tell us a little bit about how you think about partnerships, raising capital, finding investors for these deals. So you're the developer, you're the builder on these things, which is really cool. I get you're not using your own specific crews, but you're that person making it happen and finding the right crew and going out and doing that. But how would someone who maybe wants, the reason I'm asking this question is because I want someone listening to this who maybe wants to do a ground up construction on their own, but they don't have the finances. Maybe they have some build experience and they believe in this model, but they can't just go do it all on their own. How should we be thinking about either like having investors or raising capital or creative ways to partner with people to do more of this co-living ground up stuff?
Okay. So going back to my 32 bedroom, 32 bath, it is, it's going to shake out to probably a $6 million appraisal, maybe 5.7, 5.8 million.
Awesome. That's awesome.
But the cost is going to be 3.5 or 3.6. So there is a lot of upside by you're taking a residential zoned property, and then by the time you're getting your permanent financing, the bank cannot underwrite it any longer as a residential as a residential loan. It's now, you've tricked the system where you've taken the residential property and you've got to go find commercial financing. So anyways, I've figured that all out, but back to your question. So raising capital on these deals, if the cost is only 3.5 to 3.6 million, we're coming in with capital, maybe 6, 7, 800,000, and then we're going to get the construction loan for the remainder. And what else? So typically, yeah, these are kind of small LLCs, maybe a one-off family or 2 partners or 3 partners want to work together and take one of these things down. So, I haven't done a lot of pushing this out into the world and raising big fund money because it's just not at that 5 million or more. It's not at the larger value to go out there and raise money. So typically, from what I've been doing, is just small LLCs with typically 3 people. Everybody's got a function in the LLC. We meet weekly. We talk about the deal. We make sure everything's on track. Some of the guys want to learn this stuff hands-on. Some of them want to be a little more hands-off. So they just tell me where they want to be. And so I'll kind of delegate to them if they want to be a little more hands-on with some of this stuff. But after these guys have done one deal with me, they're going to be able to replicate this in the future.
And is your goal with that after you build, so you bring some capital to the table, you said 6 to 800,000, you bring that, somebody's got to bring that to the table. That's not a huge raise. That's not like you're going out and raising from 100 investors. That's maybe 2 to 3 investors. I like that. I like raising more money from a smaller group of people than less money from a larger group of people. You just less people to report to. And I think the technical term is hey, it's more of a joint venture, right, than it is a raise. Everybody's kind of everybody's taking some risk with you, and hey, we're doing this together, which I think that vibe is also a better vibe when it comes to building these things. But when you do this, is your goal at the end to get that $6 million appraisal, $5.5-6 million appraisal, and then cash out so that you guys have no cash in the deal? Is that ultimately your goal? And how close to that do you realistically think you'll be able to get?
So yes, that is the goal. We want to get a strong appraisal. We want to make sure we've got really good cash flowing, call it tenants, cash, we've got really good cash flow into the permanent phase so that we can get that appraisal. I haven't, so I'm still in framing mode right now on my first one, but talking to some of the other folks in this space, that's really what they're seeing. So I haven't seen it yet myself, but that's the plan. I think we will get the appraisal price is really going to be driven by cash flow. So if we can bring in, strong cash flows, if it's through different programs or different other niche ideas, if the cash flow is there, I'm confident the bank will be willing to lend on that.
Yeah. And it's just so crazy, man, because we're talking about these numbers, we're talking about cash flow, and we're talking about these numbers in what's the 9th most expensive market in the entire world per Google right before I got on this episode. So I think it's just crazy because a lot of investors think, oh, you can't cash flow in expensive markets. You can't find, but here you are with a strategy, coming into a strategy, A, helping to solve affordable housing. And then B, you're doing it in a way where you could potentially get 100% cashed out for all you and your investors. So any dollar you make after that is what we call an infinite return, right? It's a return on no money because you got all your money back out. And I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is you said this is kind of a hack. And I'm starting to see this more in co-living. And I think it's the greatest hack of all time. You're taking a residential property, and you said this, I'm just kind of repeating this back, but residential property, you're going to get commercial financing, which is good. Like I don't want people to see that as a bad thing. I want them to see
very good problem to have.
Yeah, because the commercial financiers, and I want you to add to this, but this is how I understand it, Ross, is that like the commercial financiers, they're going to look not just at what the house next to your house sold or the duplex next to your duplex sold. They're going to look at, okay, what's the cash flow? And with co-living, you've got great cash flow. So now you're increasing the value of the property because of the strategy you're using, which is co-living, and you're getting these crazy high appraisals. And that's what you want because that allows you then to cash out all your money. Correct my thinking on that. Is that how you're thinking about it too? Am I thinking about it correctly? That's how else do you think about financing for just our
you're
listeners?
exactly right. I mean, once you move from residential to commercial, like on the residential side, the only thing the appraiser cares about is what's the house next door or what did the house next door sell for? Once you're going to the commercial space,
and it's hard to hack that. It's hard to hack that.
It's hard to hack that. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Once you go to the commercial side, they're going to look at three things. They're going to look at costs, they're going to look at the comps, and they're going to look at the cash flow. The comps are there. I mean, we can get on Google Maps and drive the neighborhood, and we can pull property title, or we can pull property titles and see the bank's lending and the notes that are behind those properties, and et cetera. We could go down that rabbit hole and find that these things are trading for about $200,000 per bedroom, per bathroom, and then it's just the cash flow. As long as you have the cash flow in place. I mean, when you're going to get the commercial loan, the bank's actually not going to care about me. They're going to care about my tenant. Who are you bringing in, and what's their financial strength, and what are they bringing to the table, and how strong are they financially? Because I'm going to end up, signing, hopefully more of a master lease. That's my goal, is to really sign something that looks like a master lease with maybe a nonprofit or a different entity. And all of a sudden the bank, they care less about my financial strength and more about the individual that's coming in and grabbing this big $6 million duplex. So.
Well, man, that's a nice transition to kind of creative ways to stabilize those properties, because obviously any investor or anybody listening to this, I mean, there's no way they can't be impressed by what you're doing in LA, on just understanding that, like, holy crap, 32 bedrooms, 16 on each side. This is crazy, right? This is crazy in a good way in terms of cash flow. Obviously, we're increasing density, so we're helping have more housing. My question is, how are you thinking about ways to stabilize this once you've built it? Meaning ways to get it cash flowing as quickly as possible once you've built it. I know we've talked about some different thoughts that you've had. You've kind of hinted to them a couple times in this episode. So maybe let's kind of dive into that. What are ways you're thinking about? Because obviously any good investor that builds something for a couple $1 million, $3.5 million is then thinking, how fast can this thing be producing me money? Because now I have a loan on this thing and I need to be making payments, et cetera, et cetera. So what are some ways you're thinking about doing that?
Yeah, so I've kind of studied this space in the market. There's just different things out there. I know there's one guy, he's doing more, I'd say more bougie, upscale, co-living. he's geared towards young professionals, which I think is great. I think it's a great niche. I've been kind of focused more on, a couple things that are, I guess, call it healthcare adjacent. I'm not sure if that's the right phrase, but we'll just go with it. And what I mean by that is, there's an operator that is licensed to basically house folks that is backed by Medi-Cal. So not Medicare, but because I'm in California, so it's Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal will pay basically $108 per night for folks that are really in need of housing. So if you think about folks that are, kind of transitional, but they're going to the hospital, they're tying up the doctor's time, they take a bedroom for the night, and then they leave, and then they're back, 1 or 2 weeks later. Medi-Cal has figured out that every time they do this, it's a $2, $3, maybe $4,000 cost, because they're taking up the doctor's time, the nurse's time, everybody's time, and then they're doing it again. So Medi-Cal's figured out that it's cheaper to house these people through a licensed program. That licensed program right now will pay $108 a night. You're going to screen people, and as we get into this healthcare adjacent, I apologize, I'm just not the expert, but I know there's some really good value there. My expertise is more on the development side, but just working with a strong operator such as that. Another conversation I'm having is with,
and just to pause you there for a second, you would go into Medi-Cal, and your vision for this is fine, man. I know this is like, you don't have to be the expert on this. I think this is going to be new for a lot of people, because a lot of people, and a lot of people even that I'm coaching, we're thinking about putting one tenant in each room and managing it like almost like a multifamily property, right? But I think what's creative and what's new and what's really awesome about the way you're thinking is you're saying, hey, I just want to go to a freaking organization that signs one big lease on this entire place, and then you move on to do your superpower, which is build more of these. Am I right? That's how you're thinking about it?
Totally. I definitely want to stay in my lane. I know what I'm good at. I know how to force the appreciation through the design and the construction process, which I kind of just explained. But yeah, I mean, there's such a need out there, and just marrying this up with putting a partnership together with a very strong operator in this space is my goal. And then there's another kind of gal and group I'm working with. We're just still having conversations. So hopefully by the time this airs, I'll have a couple of these contracts in place. But she focuses on recuperative care, where basically people that are in the hospital, they can continue after they've been treated. They can stay in the hospital. Again, it's at that expensive rate, $3,000-$4,000 a night, or they can go to a list of recuperative care providers, and she'll basically house people. She'll have care there 24/7, and she has contracts in place with Martin Luther King Hospital, LA Care, and Kaiser, up to $250 a night. So, the value is there, just kind of from that perspective. And then the last one that I'm currently working on, is more former foster care kids. We're in kind of the heart of Los Angeles. I've recently connected with another group. There's a transitional housing program for former foster care kids, and it's all the way in Riverside County. When they saw pictures of what I'm developing in this space, they were just like amazed. They were like, this is perfect. 2 to 3 hours driving distance away from Riverside kind of gets these young adults out of their backyard where maybe they would find trouble, puts them in a new space, new location, but still within reason, but a little further away where they're, just in a new environment. But we're continuing discussions with them. Actually, tomorrow we're going to have another call with Riverside County. They love it, but the transitional like that space. I mean, they're willing to pay like $4,700 per month per young adult. And I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with former foster care kid statistics, but once the money dries up, they turn 18. It's horrible. I think it's like 80 to 90% of these young adults end up incarcerated on the streets, selling themselves for sex, all the bad stuff. So, I've become just more passionate towards that model mostly. You still have to run the business. I mean, you still have to staff it. You've got to make sure care workers are there full time. So I know that number I just floated out there, 4,700. It sounds like it's a lot, but your expenses are also going to be very significant. But I mean, in my mind, if you can give back and really do this with a purpose, I mean, that's kind of where my heart is mostly at, is really looking at these young adults and giving them the next leg up on, finding job, if they want to go to school, figuring out how that looks, and just really giving them the support that everybody needs at that young age. I mean, I remember when I was at that age, and my parents just made sure I was on to the next step. I was going to college, and as I kind of started the podcast, I was working on my degree. So very fortunate from that perspective. So just looking to, do this with a purpose, and, there's no shortage of programs out there, nonprofits, but yeah.
So freaking cool, dude. Yeah. I think, it's funny. I get these comments on my ads all the time. So we run ads. I have a coaching program where I help people achieve financial freedom through this model, right? Through co-living, some version of co-living. And now there's like all these little niches in co-living. So it's really become a dynamic, fun, cool, high cash flowing, can make you a millionaire in one deal per the numbers you've just shared with us. Like that it's a powerful space. But I get all these comments of people just being like, just kind of haters, so to speak, that are just talk about how terrible this is, and can't believe America's gotten to this point, and blah 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 blah. And maybe there's some truth to the fact that, like, if everything was perfect, all of us would have a beautiful, huge home with a white picket fence. No matter how much money we all made, like maybe that's the ultimate American dream. But and so maybe there's some truth to that piece of it. But when you consider where we are at, if you just look at reality, I think it takes entrepreneurs like you, my friend, to come in and say, okay, what's a solution? And if a solution is a 32-bedroom duplex, and we can do it in a way that is in integrity, that helps, that has a purpose, like you're sharing, there is a community aspect to this, then we should be doing this more, and we should be looking for those ways. I mean, and maybe you could elaborate on this, but I remember when we first chatted, Ross, you said there was even someone, I think, building something similar to what you're building, but then renting it to the city. Do I have that right? And then they were using it. Tell us a little bit about that, because that was also a really cool concept. That's like, sure, not perfect world ideal, but hey, if we have the problem, let's figure out a way to solve the problem. And if you would elaborate on the homeless part, I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah. A colleague developer of mine, he's definitely years ahead of where I am at. But he signed 5 master leases with the city of Los Angeles. It's LAHSA, LAHSA. So Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. But he signed 5 master leases earlier this year with LAHSA, and it's transitional homeless housing. They'll come in, they'll, obviously get the building occupied, and they're doing master leases. Trying to think what else, but they're running that whole program. But they'll get the building occupied, they'll staff it, and then they'll go just make sure everybody has what they need. They're checking on people on a daily basis. Obviously, there's some security measures, such as security guards, typically out front. But that's another angle. That's another angle that's out there. There's Downtown Women's Center, kind of a similar setup, but it's obviously just for women. But here in Los Angeles, Downtown Women's Center, I've spoken to them. Kind of the same need is out there, very similar need. But trying to think who else. But yeah. I mean, you can go Chat GPT, and you can type in the continuum care of Los Angeles, or if you want to go to Florida or wherever, you can just type in continuum care of Houston, Texas, and you can get a list of organizations, nonprofits, city, adjacent agencies, and really go on the hunt for who would need an asset like this.
Yeah, man, I think the way you're thinking about it is really smart. And I think this is going to spark a lot of thoughts in people's brains as they're listening to this on how else they can do this, create cash flow from this, and have less of the operational strain. And I think in the co-living world today, that is the number one reason I'm seeing bigger investors stay out of this space, is because of the operational strain. But you're kind of finding some ways to crack that code, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. But brother, as we wrap up today, I want to kind of ask you one more question, kind of coming back to your true superpower, and that is developing and building these and your vision for that. If somebody wanted to develop their first one, a small one, maybe maybe not the maybe not the $6 million duplex you're doing, break it down for them. Where should they start? And maybe they are not a developer. Where should they start? Should they connect with a developer first? Should they look for some zoning first? Should they look for, if you were to kind of break it down into maybe the 3 steps to get someone started on the journey of developing their first co-living building from the ground up, how would you advise them? What advice would you give them? And what steps would those be?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you got to identify a property and the location. From there, once you know your location, I'd go down to the city planning department. Take 2-3 hours out of your day, go down there, book an appointment, and just talk to them about what you can build and how you can, what your setbacks, from the left to the right to the front to the back, what your setbacks are going to be, and then basically your constructible square footage as I've outlined, because that's very, very important. I'm talking about the city of LA. As soon as I go to LA County, they'll say, no, we don't do more than 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom dwellings here. So you've got to be very specific on what you want to build in the location. And then from there, if you can seek out, once you've got your location, what it is you want to build. If you can seek out some mentorship in the development space, that would be great, because we're building houses. Definitely not the first guys building houses. There's millions of builders out there. Seek out kind of a mentorship on that development space, and just learn from their mistakes. I mean, everything I'm explaining and showing and sharing, I mean, has taken me 7, almost 8 years to kind of figure out and get this thing refined. And as I'm building the 32-bedroom property right now, I'm still refining the process even more and more. So it's a long journey, but that's how I would fast forward. I would just know what's allowed by the city, and then I would seek out mentorship on the development side of things.
Yeah, brother. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom today, Ross. This was mind expanding, even for me, man. And I've been in this space a long time, believe it or not. Like, even though it's a new space, I've been in it a long time, but it's mind expanding for me. It's cool to kind of get into your brain, see how you think about development. I really was inspired by the way you're thinking about operating these and stabilizing them quickly. And again, just like the fact that you're able to create cash flow and equity, in one of the most expensive markets in the United States is also just a very, very, very powerful tool. And I think it goes to show the power of co-living. And so maybe my final question for you would be, what would you say to those people who come up to co-living and say, I don't think that'll ever work in my market? I hear that quite a bit. What would you say to those people?
I would say, with where the nation's trending, this isn't a fad. It's not going out of style. It's not just coming in and going out of style. So I think co-living is one of those niches that's here to stay. It makes sense from an affordability standpoint. It makes sense for some of the things I'm sharing with you that have, community-backed purposes. And yeah, I would say this is not a fad. This is going to gain more traction. This is, in my mind, this is where Airbnb was, 15 years ago. This is, just, it's just, I think we're just coming off the ground here. So yeah, I think we're in a really good spot. Being some of the early adapters here. I mean, you've definitely adapted this several years ago, probably a decade ago. But yeah, that's what I see.
There you go, listeners. You have the ability to jump on the train or not jump on the train. But I couldn't agree more with you, Ross, on this being here to stay. We're at the beginning. We're at the ground front of this. And it's exciting to be in at this time. So, brother, I want to say, first of all, thank you for bringing your wisdom. Thank you for your time. I know your time is valuable. Thank you for being flexible with this. If someone wants to connect with you in some sort of a way, I know you're not big on social, but what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not big on social, but I'll throw my cell phone out there and you can text me and we can do a Calendly. I'll send you my Calendly invite. But yeah, my cell phone is area code 562-236-6808. And yeah, I'd love to connect with people that can kind of have the same vision. And yeah, we can make everything a better place out there.
Yeah, man. I love your vision. We love having people on this show that are just collaborators, that are kind of willing to pull back the curtain and just share the behind the scenes. And you have 100% done that, man. And I really appreciate that. You didn't hold anything back, and thanks for sharing that. So really appreciate you being on the show. And man, as this building develops, let's maybe once this thing is done, let's do a follow-up episode, talk through some of the real numbers, maybe share some pictures and screenshots. I'll make a note of that and we'll circle back around.
For sure. Of course. Sounds good.
All right, Ross. Thanks for your time, brother.
Thanks, Sam.
Gosh, I hope that episode just opened your mind to new ways to look at a really, really cool up and coming space. You guys, if you're listening to this, if you're understanding this, if you're putting any of this into action, getting some coaching on any of this, you are on the cutting edge of the co-living space. And that is frankly, where the money is made is by those early adopters, right? Just think about being an early adopter on Airbnb or Uber. Those are the guys and the girls that made millions and millions and millions. And so congratulations, you're in the right place. Share this episode with someone that you think needs to get into co-living or maybe is in co-living, but needs to take another look at the ground up construction aspect of this. And I will see you on the next episode.